Hello, my name is Rebecca Sharp, and my informative speech is over adoption. Adoption occurs when a child is given up by their legal guardians or parents for any number of reasons. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes they are not ready to have the kids, but they're not one to abort. They rather continue to give the kid a happy life because they can make another family, another couple happy. So once these kids are given up, they can go through a foster care system or orphanage. Sometime, and then another family, another couple, or even single women. Single men aren't usually eligible to adopt just because it's a little tricky and messier in those instances. But these people can then go and adopt through a system, through agencies, or independently to adopt the children and give them a happy home. So not always is this the case. Sometimes it's where mom and a stepdad get married and the kid is raised by the stepdad. And once the child gets older and they're able to fully make up their mind, they go and they ask the stepdad to be their legal guardian. This happens often. It's a lot of single moms or single dads even get married and there's a stepdad, stepmom situation, and the kid's like, well, you raised me, and I want your last name, or I want to be known as yours. So the children will go to their parents. Sometimes if they're legal, if they're 18 or older, they'll just do it on their own independently and decide that they want their last name or the stepmom to be associated with them, or as their stepmom's child. So there's other options. Usually when families do agencies, there's a few different ones. There's a domestic one, which is within the United States. These couples or single women go through a professional agency, and they create kind of like a guideline of what they want to do, how they want to adopt. They get more hands-on. They get to talk to the birth mother, create a hospital plan, and all the proper paperwork to adopt the child. So usually it's within boundaries. The birth mother gets to say, they get to meet the birth mother, and they create a game plan. In these situations, the birth mother is also able, and along with the adopted couple or a single woman, to say whether or not they want an opened or closed adoption system, where the birth mother can continue to see the kid as the kid grows up. Some situations it's closed adoption, and those are more personal matters usually as to why the biological parent doesn't see the kid growing up. Sometimes they just don't want to. They just want to kind of put it behind them and move on with their lives, which is twisted. And sometimes it's hard for the kid, but that was the decision that was made. Then you also have an international adoption. These are definitely costly. So sometimes it's also seen as a cheaper route. However, through the agency it's cheaper, but when you have to transfer the kid back over to the United States, it gets a little bit more difficult. Just the travel for you to go and meet the kid. When doing international adoptions, you have to go visit the kid. At least one person out of you and your spouse have to go, or the single woman does have to travel on multiple occasions to go see this kid to make sure there's a connection, and they're just not handing over a kid to some strangers that the kid's never seen. It causes very stressful situations otherwise, and they're trying to avoid that at all costs. They want to make sure that you click with the kid and there's a true connection there. So each country actually determines how their adoption process goes. Like China will allow so many divorces, and Bulgaria allows a different number, I believe. So I believe China is 2, and Bulgaria is one, a divorce. And then the process after, like if you have divorce within a couple, there is a certain year span that you can, that the new couple can be together before they're able or eligible to adopt, just to ensure that that the kid that's going into your hands isn't going into something that could fall apart. However, there's always the chances of that, but normally it's best to avoid stressful situations for the children. There's also independent non-agency adoptions. So this is typically where kind of more of like the stepdad situation comes into play. However, what you typically need is an adoption attorney, because each state has their own guidelines as to how the adoption system is set up, which is also why the agencies for international and the domestic ones also come into play. There is legal matters that you have to go through, obviously, in order to adopt a child. But the adoption attorney, or even a private attorney, your own personal one, as long as they have some background with the adoption system. You don't want to get someone that's new and off the bat. However, some people do that. You just want someone that's more experienced in the field. You need a licensed social worker. Licensed social workers will be there for every single agency, but they're more given through the agency. For the independent, you have to seek them out more, because it's more specific. You're doing this on your own, essentially, by yourself with no agency. And in these cases, it's a young woman who lives a couple houses down, a couple apartments down. She's pregnant, but she isn't ready or in a position to take care of this child. But y'all are friends, y'all have known each other, and you're like, hey, I've got one kid, I can take another. That way they can still see the kid. They know who the kid's going to. But in these instances, the biological parent has to give full consent. Then from there, you have to go to the birth mother and the birth father and get their consent that they don't want to raise this kid, and that is good going into your hands and you're able to adopt. Sometimes there are situations where the biological father or the biological mother aren't in connection with the birth mother. And you have to make your best attempt in order to get consent. If you cannot reach the biological parents of the birth mother, then you have to show that evidence when it comes to court. Same with the biological father of the baby that's going to be adopted. So whoever the biological father that the biological father of the baby that's going to be adopted. I don't want to say baby daddy of the birth mother, but it's pretty much what that is. You have to get consent on all four. You even have to go to his parents and get consent there as well, just to make sure everybody's on the same page that this baby's going up to adopted, and later on there's no legal issues, because there has to be written consent. So from there will be obviously hearing. This goes for every single one, that the baby is happy, healthy, that the household's good and running smoothly. In these hearings, there are visitations by a social worker before, just to make sure that everything's still running smoothly, the baby's happy, there's food, no weird suspicious bruises or anything like that on the baby. So, but through these agencies, you also want to know if you're eligible to adopt. And all of the eligibility is completely dependent on whether or not you're adopting internationally. A lot of it, you have to be at least 25 years of age. If you're married, you have to be married for at least a year. Sometimes other countries make it to where it's at least 5 years that you've been married. Only single women can adopt. Once again, they have to be at least 30 years of age from the research I have gathered. And there can only be 2 kids in the household at the time if you're going to adopt. If your health status, you need to have no mental health history. And usually, in some cases, you can't predict the future, but you do not want to make sure there to be any serious illnesses that are happening. So if you have cancer, usually that's not a good sign for you to be eligible to adopt. However, if you get it later on, then you get it later on, and the adoption process has already gone through. The minimum income is about $30,000 plus $10,000 for every child that's in the home. The net worth for singles is about $100,000, and the net worth for couples is about $80,000. With all this information, I strongly encourage adoption. Actually, there's more kids that need to be adopted within the U.S. than there are internationally. But people usually go internationally. I'm not quite sure why. It's just a mindset. Usually when you think of adoption, it's internationally. But there are plenty of kids in the U.S. that need to be adopted. So that's all I have for y'all. Hope y'all have a good day. Bye.